This is the final outcome of an image that I took of a pin and a backing for that pin. I run a company called Pin Save the Climate, and we sell pins, and I have to make product shots for these, and so we do, and I do all our photography for this, and so I'm going to show you how I arrived at this final image for posting on our website. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually back out of all of these edits. Let me go ahead and just group them, and then I'm gonna get rid of that. So I just created a group, so this is, I don't lose this information. That was just a way of doing it. It's gonna increase the file size, of course, but I'm just gonna demo how I arrived at that, at this from here. This is my raw photograph. I've done some raw initial auto edits like we've learned and brought it into Photoshop. And I duplicated my background, and I personally like to be in photography mode. So I'm ready now to start with what I like to do is a quick select. Okay, now one of the cool things now is they used to have just this quick select tool in the Magic Wand, but in the recent version of Photoshop, they have what's called Object Select Tool. If you marquee over an object, it will select that object. Oh, I'm in the wrong layer, that's why. Let me deselect that and redo this again, and now I've made sure that I'm on my background layer and I'm selected here. Okay, now another thing you can do, no matter which one of these you're in, they also have what's called subject select up here, and we're going to see what happens when I do that as well. Okay, very similar, right? It grabbed what it believed was the primary subject. Now you can also go directly into what's called select and mask, which we will do, and some of these options, including the quick select and object select, are also available in that. But I'm going to just do it right here for now and show you close up some of the edits that I would make to this selection. Now I've done Command plus on a Mac to zoom in quickly, and if I use my space bar and hold down that space bar, I can turn my cursor into a hand or a grab tool and move around and navigate more quickly. Now I'm going to go to my quick select tool, and you'll notice it's hard to see here, but it defaults to what's called positive selection. If you hit the Alt key, and you'll notice what's happening up here, it will toggle between plus and minus. Okay. Now you also get to define the hardness and softness of your selection here. I'm going to keep moderately hard with the brush, and watch what happens if I select in the positive, just kind of cleaning up that edge. Okay, that's one way of getting maybe a little bit of a better selection here. Now one trick here too is if I hold down Alt and deselect right here and then come back in with the positive, notice how it did slightly different grab there. It is getting a little bit more intelligent as I work along. So if I say I don't want a negative select or a subtract select up above my selection or outside my selection, it will start to memorize which tones and values of pixels I don't want selected and start to apply that as I move along. Oh, let me back out of that. I'm backing out of that selection by doing Command Z. Now what I'm going to do, I have this selected to the degree that I'm okay with. Initially, I'm going to select and mask. I'm going to select that button up at the top. And you'll notice I have some settings saved here already in order to speed up our demo, but I have an overlay of red, which I personally like. Everyone, you can go through and change these to whichever one works best for you. You can change the density of that overlay. So notice you can get more and more dense with that red, so you can see that edge. I don't have anything super complicated behind here to see, so I don't need much opacity there. And then I'm going to go through and I'll zoom in here so you can see an edge and see some of the results. So again, I'm dragging to this corner. I want you to pay attention to this area right here as we move along here. So I want you to see some extremes. So if I select Smart Radius and I increase that, it's trying to guess what it thinks that I want and what I don't want. And you see that? I like to keep any of that minimal. Now, I want you to see these edges again. If I do an increase, a significant increase in smoothing, you can just see things smoothing out any hard edges. If I feather, it's feathering out. So it's trying to blend between the edge and whatever is beyond that edge. All right. I'm going to pull these back. I tend to be someone who thinks less is more. If you do heavy contrast, it's trying to split and separate you more from that background. And then you have the option of cutting in or out of your edge. So if I cut in, it'll cut into the object that you have selected or whatever you have selected, and this will retreat out of that. Okay. Now, I'll show you this. I found out that it did best if I was actually cutting slightly out of this object based on the lighting, but essentially you're trying to avoid getting any type of halo, because I'm going to treat this card here differently than this background, and so that blending is important. Then down here on our output settings, I always want to output as a new layer with a layer mask. Okay, new layer with a layer mask, and I'm personally remembering my settings because I think I'm going to come back in here and I want to keep all these settings again. All right, now you can also, here you have your quick select tool, refine edge, brush tool, object select, polygon lasso, and zooming in and out. Again, quick commands, command plus or minus, and moving around, use the space bar. All right, it makes it much easier. Now I'm going to use this brush tool, and I'm going to come in, and I want to just see if I do positive, right? I can toggle again using that Alt key. If I use positive, it's going to select whatever it is I'm selecting. If I use negative with this brush tool, I'm cleaning up. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave it slightly rough because I want to show you how I can use my mask in order to clean it up and do some blending once we're back into Photoshop. Okay, so new layer with a layer mask. You see this new layer with the layer mask here. Okay, it's generated that shape. Now notice it's not highlighted or it's not selected. Okay, the reason I do this mask and I create that is so I can come back again and again and again to that selection. So if I right click on that mask and hit add mask to selection, it regenerates that. Okay. Now what I'm going to first do is I want to generate a background. I want that background to be a different color. Okay, so I'm going to actually select the inverse. I'm going to inverse this mask because, watch, if I create a new layer, I'm going to actually drag that layer down below that mask, and I'm going to fill this layer now, okay? So if I go to, I'm going to deselect my selection, and I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to choose a color, and I'm going to choose that color that I've already been working with. It's going to be normal at 100%. I'm not going to preserve transparency because I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. Now notice what's happening here. I just want to show you inverse and non-inverse here, but if you see this, the black is what is coming through to this top layer, okay, and the white is what is being obstructed, right? So the white area is blocking this color layer from coming to the topmost visible layer, right? Now, if I, for instance, change the opacity, you can see that starts to break down, or the fill. Same idea, same concept. Similar but different. Okay, now watch what happens. I can inverse this mask as well. Actually, it's Command I, and you again get the idea. You're poking basically a hole through in this mask to that top layer, and whatever's below that becomes visible. Okay, now I'll inverse that, Command I, so it has more of what I want. And then I have a choice here. I can do the opacity or fill here to change the transparency that I need. So now I want to come back down to this layer, and I want to blend this color with that background. I want there to be some transparency. And rather than using opacity and fill, I'm going to use some of our blending options and see what it gives me as a preset or default, and then I can tweak from there. Now, I personally found that I liked Vivid, and watch, if I did Vivid and then changed my fill, okay, what I liked about it is it gave this kind of gradation and glow to my image, and I can change how much I want of that. So if I wanted, say, 40%, I think that feels pretty nice. Then I'm ready to go, and I feel like my background is doing very well right now. Now I'm going to zoom in, Command plus. I'm going to grab by holding the spacebar, and I'm going to show you how this edge isn't perfect. Okay, now you have a few options of how to do this, but I specifically want to show you how to do it with masking. Okay, some masking techniques. Now on your mask, you can use the paintbrush tool, and you can paint actually any color you want, but you can paint black or white as your extreme edges, extreme transparent or opaque tones or values, and that will either erase or restrict certain areas or reveal certain areas to that top layer. Now, here you get to choose those fill options. And if you paint in black, right now where the black area is, I want you to see, I'm going to use my open and close brackets, be a little smaller, and you can see I'm painting more black there, okay, and it's erasing or blocking using the mask what's below, okay, and I can, if I felt like that was too hard of an edge, I can change my brush hardness and softness. Okay, got a little thing there. Okay, so it can be very specific in terms of what I want to be revealed. So if I hit Alt here, actually, sorry, if I hit the X key, it switches between black and white. Now I'm painting in white, and I'm revealing some of that. I'm painting on the inside white portion here. Let me go ahead and show you this option too. If I go to Panel Options, I can increase the size of those thumbnails so you can see a little bit better. Now, I want to start addressing the card, how to edit the card and the pin, and I want to do those independently. So what I'm going to start to do, because I already have an outline selection as a mask of the card, I'm going to select the pin now, and I'm going to show you a different tool to do this. This is the pen tool, sorry, and the pen tool is a graphic tool that is often used heavily in Illustrator, which is a vector program, but it comes in handy, especially if you like using the pen tool, if you've used it in other applications, as a way of creating an outline or drawing of something, and then we're going to turn that into a selection. Okay? I find this to be a really powerful tool. So I'm going to zoom in here and show you how this pen tool works. You're working on anchor points that create paths with a pen tool. So if I select this and select down here, it creates a path. Okay? I'm going to then, and notice those anchor points are, it's blue if it's active, and it's white if it's not. So if I select here, I'm going to then select here, and I'm going to hold we'll zoom in so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to select here, and if I select and hold, I want you to see what happens there. Select and hold and you pull away from that anchor, it creates a curve. Okay, so if I select here and pull, it's going to create a curve. Now, I'm going to go to right below the pen tool. This is called the direct select tool. And this allows me to select anchors directly. And I'm going to get very close in. I'm going to select that anchor and notice it's blue and nothing else is. And I'm going to use that anchor. You can either drag it around or you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard and you can shift where that goes. You can also grab those curve anchors, okay, and adjust what's selected. Now, I don't think it has to be absolutely perfect, but it's a good exercise in learning how to use precision with your pen tool. Okay. Keep in mind too, we could have done this with the card on the outside as well, right? Now, noticing here that I want to come out a little, but I could also create another anchor point by just going back to the pen tool and selecting on that path and creating another anchor that I could move from, okay? Okay, now, if I back out, Command 0 brings me back to full screen with my image, or fit to screen, and if I right-click on this, look at some of the selections. One of them is Make Selection. So if I make a selection, you can feather that edge slightly if you felt like it. I'm not going to. And hit OK. It creates a selection out of that. Now, just like before, I want to refine that edge. You need to be in a selection tool, and neither Direct Select or the Pen tool are technically selection tools. So if you go back up to Quick Select or Object Select, it'll give you that option again of going Select and Mask. I actually saved all of our settings, so I think they'll be relatively similar, which they are. And I'm not going to refine much. I'm going to do that with my paintbrush if I see any glaring issues. I'm going to make sure I do a new layer with a layer mask, hit OK, and look it. Now I have both of these. Now I'm going to select this one below. Alright, this is my card outline. I'm going to create a selection or add mask to selection here. And because this item or this object is inside, or this mask is inside of this one, if I select and right right click on, well, on this mask, I can subtract that mask from the selection currently, and look what happens. So basically, right now, this card is the item that is selected. Now I'm going to go up to Select and Mask, and I'm going to create a single layer that is a mask that I want for altering this object. Okay. If I right select here and select Add Mask to Selection, that's active, and I can now go in and change whatever I want to this object with my adjustment layers. So I'm going to create a black and white. I'm going to turn it into a grayscale black and white. I'm going to increase the contrast. I'm going to do a red filter actually. And then I'm going to also make a Add Mask to Selection, adjustment to the brightness and contrast. I'm going to up the contrast all the way, and I'm going to brighten that card. You see that? Okay. Now, you'll see here I have two adjustment layers to that mask exclusive, not to the entire image. And now I want to do some adjustments to this vote climate pin. Okay, I think it's a little bit too bright and it needs some adjustments. Let me make sure you can see everything that's happened. Okay, now I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to add mask to selection. So it just now is selecting the pin, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. I'm going to change the brightness and contrast of just that pin. I'm going to kind of darken it slightly, lower the contrast a bit. Okay. I'm going to reselect it again, and I'm going to go to the levels, maybe bring a little bit down here and a little bit more. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of bringing down so those highlights aren't so hot, because they got a little bit intense. And then I'm going to add mask to selection once more. This time I'm going to go into, let's see, I'm going to try selective color. And I'm going to try to selectively adjust the reds. So watch this. I'm going to re-brighten just the red areas. See that? So here it's just applying whatever it can to the red areas, and that's going to increase just those red areas so that I don't have continued loss of information in that in the text. Okay, but I in this image want that to pop, and so I'm not adverse to it. Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to my panel options and shrink this so you can see it a little bit as a whole. And then I'm gonna up here so you can see what's going on. Okay, if I get rid of some of these as we go, you can see what's happening. Okay. The last thing I want to do is I want to go around and clean up some areas so I have some dust spots and stuff like that. The best way I like to do that is to start by using our spot heal brush tool. And the trick here now is that you got to find where that's happening. Okay, so if I'm down here, this is my background copy. Oh, I must have already cleaned that up in my background copy. So I previously had done that, and you can see that selection, making that visible, is what cleaned that up. Now if I duplicate this layer again, hit OK. I want to show you I'm basically just going in and dabbing or drawing over some of those smaller areas and cleaning up. And what it's doing is, in an intelligent, content-aware way, it's going in and trying to replicate the pixels around it that thinks that blend best with what you're selecting, the area you're selecting. Okay. Now that's my background that's poking through. I would normally come in and probably clean up these edges a little bit more. But if I get up here now to this selection, this is where I would be able to edit the face of that card. That's the most visible card available to us, card face. I think that will also work here on, I'm using the open and close brackets. I'm closing that bracket down. See, that's not working on this layer, so I have to find where that's happening. Okay, is that happening way back down here? Okay, because those were blocking, right, some of the image and revealing it up here. Okay, so that's actually what's poking through. And it won't let me do these. I have to come back up here to get that card. Okay, just keep that in mind. Now, let's see what this all looks like next to the one I did previous. So I'm going to group these. We'll see how close we got. I think I scrutinized. This is before anything. It's after. And this one, it's a little bit brighter. So I think I came in and wanted this card a little bit brighter in my final edit, which I can do by coming back in either to this brightness contrast property and brightening that card up. Okay, that might be a way of doing that. Okay. Now, I hope that makes sense and helps explain some techniques. Again, like I said, I'm trying to throw a bunch at you, but there are many approaches and many different ways of thinking about these tools and how to apply them to masking. So remember that playlist we have is available with a variety of perspectives, and if this is something that interests you, keep practicing. It takes practice to make this work. All right,